We're all still here. Although, I'll just say, before we do the robe chant, is we were trying incense. We were using low smoke incense. It's some of us old timers grew up with incense, and then we started doing flower petals, but we thought maybe we could, quote, get away with it. But the last time I went to Zen Center, Green Gulch and Tassajara, I mean, institutions that hardly ever change. Nobody's using incense anymore. So I'm really grateful that some of you let us know that, because I was noticing it too. Even low smoke incense impacts a room. And I just offering flower petals. There's fresh petals in there, and I can smell them. It's beautiful. So everything changes. Okay, now we'll do the robe chant. I mean, excuse me, whatever this thing is that we're doing. The before lecture chant. Thank you. See, I just trust everybody's going to keep me straight. There, will help keep each other upright and clear. Now I have to remember it. An unsurpassed, penetrating, and perfect Dharma is rarely met with, even in 100,000 million kalpas. Having it to see and listen to remember and accept, I vow to taste the truth of the Tathagata's words. You guys warming up? Yeah. Yeah? Okay. You guys warming up? No, Patrick, Toshin, turn on your heat. I thought we'd start where we ended on yesterday, Saturday. Katagiri Roshi, Peaceful Life. Being told that it is impossible, one believes in despair. Is that so? Being told that it is possible. Being told that it is possible, one believes in excitement. That's right. But whichever is chosen, it does not fit one's heart neatly. Being asked what is unfitting, I don't know what it is, but my heart knows somehow. I feel an irresistible desire to know. What a mystery human is. As to this mystery, clarifying, knowing how to live, knowing how to walk with people, knowing how to talk with people, demonstrating and teaching, this is the Buddha. From my human eyes, I feel it's really impossible to become a Buddha. But this I, regarding what the Buddha does, vows to practice, to aspire, to be resolute, to tell myself, yes, I will. Just practice right here and now, and achieve continuity endlessly, forever. This is living in vow. Herein is one's peaceful life found. So simple. And Katagiri Roshi practiced a lifetime of practice for all of us, with and for all of us. Same quest, our quest to return to the human body, to the heartbeat of the world, the warm breath of life, to the movement and flow of feelings, thoughts, and sensations. So I'm actually looking forward to this Dharma talk. In a certain way, I'm giving it, but I'm not giving it because I'm going to use different sources, but I want to tell the story of Buddha's enlightenment. It's kind of like a ritual, an enactment this time of year. This Prince Siddhartha, the story of the Buddha, I remember being at Green Gulch in the children's program. Really, do you still use this with the kid? Yeah, yeah. It's. So I'm going to read you and show you some picture stories. You can just kind of relax, let your mind soften and open even more. And I'm also going to use, Rafe Martin just did a wonderful new book called A Zen Life of Buddha, which I highly recommend. And I'm going to read some of what he has to say. That's where I'll begin. Chapter 3. So we know something happened. There was a chapter 1 and a chapter 2, but for today we're going to start with chapter 3, and it's called Enlightenment, Touching the Earth, Seeing a Star. And it's beautiful. I think in each chapter he says our story. It's like it's the story and it's our story. So please listen with the ears of, this wasn't just Shakyamuni Buddha 2,500 years ago, and this guy, and this whatever, is this, find your own story in this story. This is a myth, this is an archetype, this is a story that is the deep story of our own hearts and searching and awakening and hardships and love of the whole world. At the age of 29, the sheltered prince of the Shakya clan, Siddhartha Gautama, really saw and took in the facts of impermanence. Having seen an old man, a sick man, one could presume, we'll change some of the gender here, having seen an old man, a sick woman, a dead person, and last of all, a homeless truth seeker, Shakyamuni was precipitated into a struggle for truth that was to persist until Buddhahood had been attained. Struggle was something to attain. It's raining. Leaving the palace, he rode to the river boundary of his father's kingdom, and there at the river's edge, he severed his attachment to palace life and cut off his long hair with a sword stroke. Crossing the river, he left his sheltered life of luxury and ease and disappeared alone into the forests and mountains. He made his way to the hermitages of the two most noted religious teachers of his time. Mastering their methods, he found no lasting freedom from birth, old age, sickness, and death. He moved on to truly isolated places that held terror for a sheltered ex-city boy, such as himself, deep forests, graveyards, and charnel grounds, and forced himself to undergo the most fearful austerities. He then reduced his intake of food until he was eating first 1,000, then 100, then 10, then at last 1 single sesame seed a day. You think you're hard on yourselves. He really wanted to know, and that's what he thought was the way. His flesh withered, his eyes sank into their sockets, his hair rotted and fell out. Every rib, every bony socket and joint stood out exposed like the wreck of a ship when the tide withdraws. I'll show you a picture. I want to see a picture because there's often tankas and illustrations of. You go to the Asian Art Museum or museums, or Shakyamuni Buddha became a skeleton, a living skeleton, and took himself right to the edge of death. After 6 years of such effort, exhausted and at the point of death, he collapsed, more a skeleton wound round with sinews and veins than a living person. His great effort had failed. We do this slightly differently. We just keep trying the same. What is I can't remember a quote that won't come to me is, but something about you just keep trying the same thing over and over again. Maybe if I eat a little less, maybe if I, maybe just whatever your habit patterns tell you is you just keep trying through the way that you think is the way to do it. You just keep doing it, and right? Am I the only one? And little by little, you start to realize that throwing yourself against the same wall hurts, and it doesn't. Nothing seems to be happening except more pain. For all his willful exertions, you might notice, that's a great word, willful exertions. He'd found no great truth and no release from birth, sickness, aging, and death. Now it seemed that he must die without attaining his goal, with a capital G, without becoming one with the yearning of his heart. The bitterness of that moment after 6 years of unrelenting but now seemingly wasted effort was beyond belief. And then something happened. Something in him decided to eat properly again. Something arose in him, an insight, perhaps love for the body, perhaps love for self. And then, as if an immediate response, Sujata, a maiden from a neighboring village, came to offer a bowl of milk rice. So I'm going to read from here, but I also want to, Wendy Darling has a beautiful book out about the presence of the feminine in these stories. And in so many turning points, there's a feminine presence, a nurturing presence, a kind presence that comes forward that's part of the path. And Sujata is a really important part of this story. In a small village at the end of a forest lived a herdsman and his wife Sujata. She had just given birth to their first child and was very happy. Sometimes she's a maiden. Often she's a maiden. But here, because she'd just given birth to her first child, they say, and the stories say, it was the milk from the cows that she made a meal with, but sometimes it says it was her breast milk. So the stories, you can tell stories get turned and cleaned up, and Wendy Darling she's a really good resource she did a lot of searching about, so what was said and what's the myth and what's the story. So, but any case, what we know is that she made a delicious meal from milk. Now she was taking this food into the forest as an offering to the spirits she thought lived there. She had often prayed to these spirits and wanted to thank them for helping her have such a healthy baby. And as she entered the forest, she saw Siddhartha sitting there. Can you imagine the skeleton sitting there, barely alive, weak and thin, but his face was radiant, and she gazed at him in surprise. I have never seen anyone like that before, she thought to herself. Perhaps it is the king of the tree spirits himself. And so she took the specially prepared food and placed it before him. There's a picture of Sujata and her offering. We'll do a food offering later today. I never thought there's a traditional, when you do the ceremony, there's a traditional food offering, and you do traditionally rice and fruit and sweet tea. At least that's the way I was taught. But maybe we should put another bowl of milk as in honor of this story and the nurturing of milk. Siddhartha slowly opened his eyes and saw the bowl in front of him, and silently smiling to Sujata, he lifted it to his lips and began to drink. And to her amazement, his body grew more and more radiant as he drank. When he was finished, he placed the bowl down and thanked her, saying, "You thought I was a spirit, but I am only a person, a human being in search of the truth. Your offering has made me strong again. Now I am sure that I shall find the truth. Much good will come from what you have done today. Thank you." And then there's the part where there had been 5 men practicing with Shakyamuni Buddha in the forest, doing the same austerities. And when they saw Shakyamuni Buddha taking nourishment, they thought that he had turned from the path, and they left. There's another story in where Shakyamuni Buddha is after he becomes Buddha, is giving a teaching in the Lotus Sutra, and says that there wasn't just one Buddha, but there are Buddhas before Buddhas, and 500 people get up and leave. So it's really important to know that this, it's like it wasn't a straight line. It's like, but Buddha, Shakyamuni is a human being like us. It had to feel lots of things. It's part of the path. They said, "Siddhartha has given up his search. He is no longer following the holy life. Look, he bathes himself and takes rich food again. How can we stay with such a person any longer?" And so they left, thinking Siddhartha, who was to become Shakyamuni Buddha, was no longer interested in discovering the truth. But Siddhartha, strengthened by his meal, prepared to meditate, was now ready to find what he had been looking for all these many years. He stood up, waded across the river, and headed towards what would be later known as the Bodhi tree, the tree of enlightenment. I got to do a pilgrimage in India and got to sit by that river. You know what? It just looks like a river. It's like any river. Go sit by a river, see what happens. I'll bet a little forest being might come out, or a deer, or who knows, maybe Sujata will come and offer you milk, because we're all seekers. We're all seeking to wake up, and the whole world will respond if we place our whole hearts and lives there. Okay, so now here's a little bit more story. And if I could remember where I got some of this language, I would tell you, but I can't remember. It's part mine and part somebody else's, and it always is. Refresh now from this wholeheartedly and kind heart-to-heart meeting. Maybe sometimes you have parts of yourself that you think, "Oh man, I just give up on you." It's like, how many times? It's like, you're not really a seeker. You think so, maybe, but I thought you were done with that. But kindness, it's the milk of human kindness and love, heart to heart, that we can offer ourselves and we can offer other people. We can offer the world. These stories are potent. A meeting with another human being, a intimate meeting with the world. Siddhartha sits down under a Bodhi tree. Maybe you know this part of the story. When I first was practicing, nobody told this part of the story. It's really wonderful that it came, who knows why anything, but I think this is actually probably one of the, well, it's all beautiful, but he has a childhood memory. And what arises is he was sitting under a rose apple tree as a child on his family's property. And there was a sense of ease and delight and a kind of natural meditation state that just arose, that was just there and naturally accessible. Maybe that's why we didn't tell the story. No, you got to do something. And we're all young, you know, when you're young, it's maybe when, you know, when I came to this at 27, 28, maybe you think you have to do something. Maybe the older you get, you still think you have to do something, but maybe you're a little more willing to think that maybe just sitting down on the earth and some memory of ease and delight, more willing to trust and entrust ourselves to it. So it was a memory of a particular time and place, not general, particular to his life. We all have one, at least one, childhood memories of ease and delight, and some sense of being just free. Awake not as something special, but just, I suppose later you'd say beginner's mind, just a childlike mind. Open, receptive, joyful. Like, oh, what is it? Oh. So Siddhartha knew somehow, again, trusted an intuitive body. Nobody told him what to do. He didn't do it because some great teacher said, do this, and then you'll get that. Something in him said, sit down on the earth. Plant your life here under this particular tree. Trust this particular time and space. And Siddhartha makes a vow, which was always the vow of his life, of our hearts. But in this particular place, in the midst of 100,000 causes and conditions, you just never know, is that he's not going to move until he penetrates sickness, aging, and death. And he sits down in the middle of his life to penetrate the mystery of birth and death and human suffering. Now, I don't know about you, but I think maybe I do. I think we've all made that vow. You wouldn't be here. I think in some ways every human being has and is living that vow. It's just, to one degree or another, we're a little confused this way or that way. And the path is winding and meandering and sometimes you come to your cushion this weekend and you say, yes, I'm so happy to see you, cushion. And sometimes maybe some slightly more ambivalent thoughts arise. But you've made this commitment, so you bow and you sit down and you watch your squirrely mind, and there's moments where the sun breaks through and it's just, you can't believe this feeling of ease and delight that isn't anything extra. And then maybe you take it a little for granted and your little mind goes off on a little trip, and then you have to remember again, and you have to come back over and over again. And so the story goes on, because it's not like Shakyamuni Buddha, not like Siddhartha sat down and said, okay, I'm going to do this, and then whoop, he had a visitation by Mara. Well, I like this description of Mara. We all have Mara inside of us and in the world. All the fears and demons of our own heart, the suffering of the world, the whole world of delusion and confusion. You sit down on your cushion, you think, okay, I'm a Buddha, here I am. And there's all these little, let's see what we can throw at you that will knock you a little this way or a little that way. All the particulars of your karmic life and your conditioning come forward as Mara. Now, we know greed, hate, and delusion are named, but we all have our own particular little Maras. We all have our pet Mara. Maras. We do. It's part of what we're studying. It's, oh, hello, Mara, my old friend. And Mara says, you can't go around me or avoid me because I too am of the earth. You can't know the light without also knowing the dark. Stop doing this. Well, that's not what Mara says. Mara says, you need to go through me and you need to know me. Alienation, isolation, fear, self-loathing, regrets, longings, guilt, doubt, judgments, anxiety, anger, jealousy, resentments, depression. You take a breath. Touch the earth. Strengthen your resolve. Just be here. And as the story goes, the sky lost its brightness, the earth shook, and the quarters blazed and crashed, and the wind raged wildly in every direction, and the stars did not shine, and the moon was not seen, and the night spread forth still thicker darkness, and all the oceans were troubled. I thought when I woke up this morning and I heard thunder, I thought, oh, this is great. We're enacting the story. Mara's here. That's good news. Mara's here. It's like instead of squiggling around out in the shadows, it's like we've invited the whole world here to be with us and to breathe with it as agents of transformation of just here, just this. Now, the great thing, well, maybe you'll think this is great because I think it's so truth-telling, is in the end, the Buddha sits, isn't pushed around. Let me see if there was a part. Oh, Mara wasn't so happy that he wasn't able to knock Shakyamuni off his seat. So you know what Mara did? Pulled out the best card. You could watch this. And Mara said in a mocking voice, who do you think you are to think that you could sit here and wake up and be with all beings? Who do you think you are to take a seat on the earth along with all beings? Who do you think you are? So many holy people have failed to find the truth, but you think you'll succeed? How foolish you are. Don't you know that it takes a great deal of preparation to find the truth you're looking for? What have you ever done to be worthy of success? First, you wasted 29 years pampering yourself, then you wasted 6 years starving yourself. Now, this is actually funny. I hadn't, I sort of skimmed this. I'm glad I went on. Now you sit here thinking that wisdom will just come to you? How foolish. Quit this meditation, or at least show me a witness who will swear that you are worthy of succeeding where all others have failed. But these scornful words failed to bother Siddhartha. Silently, he lifted his right hand from his lap, reached in front of him, and touched the earth. The Buddha on the altar is earth-touching Buddha. Yes, the earth itself was Siddhartha's witness. For countless lifetimes, he had appeared on this earth in various forms. We've studied the Jataka tales of some of those stories. He had practiced generosity and patience. He had acted lovingly and had avoided harming others, and he had meditated on the truth. He had done all these things over and over again. Whether you believe in other lifetimes, you don't have to. How many times have you actually extended warmth and goodness to yourself or another person? Not to get anything out of it, but as a natural response. Raising your kids, taking care of a partner or somebody who's in a grocery store line. And it was then that Mara realized that he was truly defeated and faded away like a bad dream. And Siddhartha was left completely alone. The storm clouds parted and the moon shone brightly in the sky. The air smelled sweet and a light dew glistened on the tips of the grass. And everything was ready. And then he saw how this suffering goes on, what we do, what we human beings do. And then there was the understanding that compassion and love naturally rise and radiate when we see the suffering. And what comes out? The belief in separation and how we turn against ourselves and others. The insight that leads to the other shore. Remember Thich Nhat Hanh? There is suffering. There is a cause of suffering. There's freedoms from suffering, and there's a path. And the second turning of the Dharma wheel is that bodhisattva vow, is that once you understand, there is nothing but a natural response to try to bring forth more wisdom and compassion. And it's not linear. It's just seeing how suffering and the karmic bindings over and over can be undone and undone. We're still caught. At least I get caught. One, I get more humble. Two, I get more tender. I get more kind, more compassionate towards myself and others. It's like, yay. I put on Buddhist robes and taken vows, for goodness sakes, and look at me. and there's a lot more space and a lot more kindness and awareness and compassion in the course of this lifetime. And I just think, what an amazing thing that there's no end to this, and we'll just keep waking up and waking up and waking up with the whole world and for the whole world. And you look at the world and you think, what else am I going to do with this life? What else do I want to do with this life? Yeah, well, that's really good until I think that I want to go do something else. But you know, I come back quicker. So let's give each other a break here. And in this moment, touching the earth, the Buddha saw into the heart of all beings and was able to hear the cries of the world, the joy and the suffering, and Buddha's heart opened and embraced and was embraced by the entire world without end. And the clouds rolled back, kind of like today, except it's in the evening, coming towards dawn, but the clouds are parting here. And what Buddha saw was a bright moon and stars. And he felt as though a prison that had confined him for thousands of lifetimes had broken open. That the ignorance had clouded his heart in the same way the moon and stars were hidden by storm clouds. He saw that deluded thoughts that arise from this ignorance had divided reality into subject and object, self and others, birth and death, existence and non-existence. And from these discriminations arose feelings, desires, and becoming. And that the suffering of sickness, aging, and death made this prison stronger. And then he looked up and he saw the morning star arising in the night sky. I love this part of the story. He looked up and saw the morning star arising in the night sky, and the world broke open. And he said, I am awake. Or sometimes it's said that he said, I and the great earth and all beings simultaneously attain the way, awaken to the truth of oneness and love. And pleasant breezes blew softly, and heaven rained moisture from a cloudless sky, and from the trees there dropped flowers and fruit out of due season, as if to do him honor. That's what the offerings are that we'll do later. At that time, just as in paradise, the mandarala flowers, lotuses, and water lilies of gold and beryl fell from the sky and bestrewed the place of the Shakya sage. There might be some flowers. In fact, you at home might want to go out and gather some flower petals during your lunch break. Well, no, maybe no, or leaves. You could leaf. Yeah, probably in Canada there aren't many flower. Some leaves, you know. It's like something that maybe it might be part of the ceremony. You'll see. And at that moment, none gave way to anger. No one was ill or experienced discomfort. No one was ill or experienced discomfort, and none resorted to confused ways. And the world became tranquil as though it had reached perfection, which it already is. But it was awakened to itself. It's awakened to its own perfection. I bet you're going to have 100 million, if you pay attention, moments today of awakening to the perfection of the world. Just the light beam, just the dewdrops, call of a bird, maybe even your own delusion. Talking to somebody this morning, you know, if all of that hadn't happened, if Shakyamuni Buddha hadn't, Siddhartha hadn't, that happened, and then that happened, and that it's like you can't pull one thing out of the whole stream. It's all of it. Just gratitude for this life. The world calls to us as it called to Buddha, and we answer with our lives. We see we need to use and offer our lives to touch the earth, to be here along with all beings. Because we already know it. That's the more you know it, the more you can't know it. You just come back faster. That's all. And it's more tender. It's like there's just the suffering tenderizes you, and the path becomes more vivid, and your feet on the earth. And the yearning in our heart for all beings to be free just keeps bursting forth. It's the edges of my skin, but they're not quite as intact. It's like Erica and I are breathing each other in and out. We're breathing each other in and out in Canada and wherever beings are. I mean, I think there's science for this now. This isn't just like some nice religious story. And so we want to more and more give ourselves freely to the flow of life as it arises in each moment, each thing flowing in and out of everything else, to be surprised by the wonder and mystery of being alive, of color and sound and smell and taste and touch and sensation that is no color, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch, no sensation, that is sound and smell and taste. It's the same, but completely different. Same world, just turned upside down, inside out, just here. It's just not what you think. In a human body, landing right here where you are and sitting like a Buddha. And we bow and we bow and we bow. We bow to our cushion, Buddha's seat, your seat. We commit ourselves to it. We touch the earth. We bow to the people around us. We bow to the people across the room. Did I say that? That when you sit down, if there's people on either side of you, you could probably figure out some way to do that online too. If you see somebody bowing, you could just bow. But if somebody comes in and bows to their seat and you're beside them, it's like you bow. And if you're across the room from them, you bow. So it's, I mean, you can get sort of carried away with this, but it's just when we're outside walking, if you pass each other, it's like no eye contact, because that's how we get the whole world going. Just, I just stay with your own body and your own breath. But if you see somebody approaching, when you stop, just stop and bow. And then just go on. We're all Buddhas. We share one heart. I don't know if you've ever had the experience of after you sat a long retreat, or even one day, or even for a moment. And sometimes I go back out, quote, back out in the world. And my first impulse is just like I have to stop myself from bowing to somebody on the street. And it always sort of has this feeling of like, whoa. But who, I mean, maybe it would have been more than, but it's like it gets so in your body. So you bow with your heart. You bow with your state of mind. You just, it's like, hello, Buddha. Hello, Buddha. There's Buddhas everywhere. Go bow. I looked outside yesterday and Erica was down really close looking at one of the little plants. It's like, oh, bow to a plant. Just go bow to a pebble. Go bow to the, I don't know, just, because here you don't, well, you never have to hold anything back, but here you can let your whole body. You want to go out, a little time for walking meditation. If you want to go out and do a full bow to the have you been watching the rain? It stopped raining, but the rain coming down the rain chains, it's like, oh my, I just want to throw my whole body on the ground. So maybe here, if you want to throw your whole body on the ground, go ahead. You might get a little wet, or anyway, you'll know what to do. But open your heart to everything as Buddha. Every rock and tree and sun and moon and grass here to help us, freely offering itself so that we can all remember our common ground, our shared heart. Having faith in this body. This body is Buddha's body. That's the story of that's why we tell this story. Siddhartha was a human being, just like us, waking up in a body. And we have this story to help us, and we're still going to enact our own karmic impulses. There's no way around it. But touch the earth, touch your heart, beating heart, come back. Feet on the ground, simple, direct, immediate, moment after moment. Buddha's enlightenment is right here, is just this. In each cell and every atom and every breath and the sunlight pouring in, it's right here. So let's help each other use our lives well. We'll sit deeply. Ellen sent me this beautiful poem by Mary Oliver. Sleeping in the Forest. I thought the earth remembered me. She took me back so tenderly, arranging her dark skirts, her pockets full of lichen and seeds. I slept as never before, a stone on the riverbed, Nothing between me and the white fire of the stars but my thoughts. And they floated light as moths amongst the branches of the perfect trees. All night, I heard the small kingdoms breathing around me, the insects and the birds who do their work in the darkness. All night I rose and fell as if in water, grappling with a luminous doom. And by morning, I had vanished at least a dozen times into something better. By morning, I had vanished at least a dozen times into something better. So no comparative mind, no better, no worse. And let's all wake up together and bring our deep heart effort, the whole earth worthiness. You are worthy. I was trying to sneak out. It just got a little tangled up in there. You are worthy. I mean, what does that mean? You are a Buddha. Trust your heart. Trust, yes, I will. Trust just falling down and getting up. The whole earth is here to hold us and catch us. Can you hear and feel the silence? It's always here, but when you sit in retreat, it's the minute I stop talking, it's like it's right here. And it's full and it's empty. And we have nothing else to do for the rest of this day but give ourselves to it over and over. So we'll do the end of lecture chant, which is the Bodhisattva vows. We'll do some bows, and then we'll be back on the cushion at noon. But please, totally enjoy walking on this earth. Give yourself to it. Beings are numberless. I vow to save them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. Buddha's way is unsurpassable. I vow to become it.